She's a lecturer in the Department of Physics at Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Pittsburgh. And you've already heard she's in the city of Pittsburgh, so she knows a lot about what's going on there. She does research on light pollution, and she measures light in the cities using drones and aircraft, satellites, and the astronauts on the ISS. So I think she's got a lot of good things to tell us. So Diane, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking me to come and talk, and I very much want to tell you some of the things that have been happening, because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that's happened lately in the field of light pollution research. I'm an astronomer. That's how I got into this. I came out of grad school to Pittsburgh, and honestly, I didn't even notice the sky after training as an environmental and observational astronomer. And when I finally got back into it, and I finally got back into looking at astronomy, I realized that the light pollution had increased so much. Light pollution is increasing at a rate of 10% per year globally. So I was trying to structure the talk, and I thought, I'm not really going to talk about seeing stars that much, because it is important, but it's mostly important to me. Whenever I talk to other people, they're like, yeah, we know, stars. It is supremely important when you're talking to other people. If you're trying to convince someone else that light pollution is bad, that's the way to go. Costs and wasted energy. It's surprising, and the statistics are ridiculous. When you see them, you're like, how is this not more important in federal funding to stop this wasted energy? But we're mainly going to talk about safety and the environment. It's the Milky Way. There's a view of the Milky Way, and it's just so spectacular. And where you are, you're probably in a position to be able to see this, if not from right your doorstep, from down the road. It's something that about 80% of my students, and actually 82% of people in the US, can't see this from where they live, because they live in cities mostly. And this is a view that, unless you are rich enough to take a trip and take time off and travel and have a car, you don't see this. People think if they see 100 stars in the sky, that's like amazing, but you should really see about 5,000 stars in the sky. It makes you feel comforted and happy and uplifted, in awe. And awe is good for you. It's good for the heart and the soul. It's something that makes you feel big and makes you feel small and makes you feel connected. And it's hard to describe to someone who has not seen this exactly what you're missing. People that live in a city look up, and it's like looking at cement dry. Like, you can't see anything. So nobody really looks up anymore. Even when there's a blackout, that's not the first thing they think is like, run outside and look up, because all of New York City doesn't have lights. Like, I don't know. People that don't see this don't really know what they're missing. But it's connected to a lot of things. Mood disorders in teenagers is pretty strong. Same with hormonal cancers, breast cancer and prostate cancer. The risk is higher if you live in an area where there's light pollution. Insomnia is a no-brainer. Alzheimer's just came out recently. Obesity, heart disease, diabetes, all these things. It's because if there's even low levels of light at night in your bedroom while you're sleeping, your body doesn't go into the deep, restful, restorative sleep that it needs. Melatonin is a hormone that we need to follow those circadian rhythms and drop into a nice sleep. And your hormonal production of melatonin is gone if there's light, even very low levels of light, even through your closed eyelids while you're sleeping. Our brains say there's too much light. We're not going to sleep well. And there's too much light a lot of places in the world. I mean, let's just look at Europe and the eastern part of the US and Japan. There are no lights in North Korea. Just saying. And there's a lot of places that they're rapidly increasing their lights to be like everybody else. In fact, on the eastern part of the US, there are very few places where you can see a dark night sky anymore. If you want to look at maps of light pollution, there's many maps of light pollution out there. And you can see there's Cherry Springs here in the top upper part. That's the darkest place in Pennsylvania. Cherry Springs State Park. It is a dark sky site granted by the Dark Sky International. Philly's pretty white, which is the highest level of lights, and you have to go fairly far to see any amount of the Milky Way. The problem with these maps is that they're not high resolution enough. I guess we see all these counties you were saying about 40 miles west of Philadelphia. And it's a pretty nice place. You want to be more green, and I'm sure there are green patches in there. It's just the swath of the satellites that go by and make these maps, the resolution isn't high enough. That's one of the things that I'm working on, is getting really high resolution maps of different areas with my drones and my planes and my helicopters, and I have astronauts that take pictures for me as they go overhead. This is a Bortle scale, and this is how people from the ground looking up can rate their site. Is it an inner city? My students go outside and they peg it at about an 8 on the Bortle scale, and then down to an excellent dark site. The reason why cities can be seen and the lights from cities can be seen from so far away is because light scatters. It goes up into the air and it scatters on the molecules and dust particles that are in the air. The thing about that is that blue light scatters more than red light. I don't know if you've noticed that ever. This is hundreds of miles outside of Las Vegas. So this dome of light is called sky glow. And that's what happens when you have a city nearby. But this is why blue light scatters more than red light. Blue light has shorter wavelength. That's why the sky is blue, right? Sunlight comes into the atmosphere and it scatters all over the atmosphere. And then red light doesn't scatter as much, not by a lot. And we are recommending lights that are more towards the red end of the spectrum, more towards the amber color, not the bright white, blue-white lights. These are lights that are too bright and too blue and not shielded. When you have lights like this that are put up without thinking and without following the very clear recommendations of Dark Sky International and the Illuminating Engineering Society, this kind of light, 99% of it's wasted. It doesn't hit a human eye because it's scattering in all the directions. If you were to fix this and you used efficient LEDs, you could save $15 billion a year in the US alone. A year in the US. If you changed that and you didn't waste that energy, you could power 35 million homes for a year. When I say shielded, I didn't really explain what that means. So shielding is when you put a cap on top of the light that redirects any light that goes up back down. Like it's shiny and it reflects the light back down. So you're not just blocking the light and making it disappear. You're redirecting it where you want it. So what you want is this one that says full cutoff, that's pointing where you need it. These are some lights that Mark Gross, who's the head of the PA chapter for Dark Sky International, he took these pictures. I like these lights. They shield from the top, so no light goes up. And they're also, when you see these at night, they're kind of like just as bright as you need, not super glaring bright that blind you. And they're a low color temperature. That means the amber color. There's a lot of problems, especially with older drivers. There's a lot of problems with glare. If you have lights that are in people's face, shining in their eyes, it's more than just annoying. I mean, it can be a disabling thing. It's another picture Mark took. I love this one. This is a security light, but like really it's an insecurity light. You're insecure. That's why you're using this light. You think this light is going to protect you. We feel safer when lights are bright like this at night and they make it feel like day, but we're not actually safer. So there've been many studies on safety and crime, car accidents, and lights at night. And there's no correlation. There's no agreement that more light makes you safer. You just feel safer. It's something that it's a perception of safety, but it's not actual safety. For actual safety, you just need a certain low level of light that's uniform enough that there aren't bright things shining in your face, creating harsh, dark shadows. And for older people, it's really hard. Seeing a bright light shine in your eyes, your reaction time to get back your night vision is slower than other people, younger people. So here's one. This is the one Jill was talking about, lights outside a house. People put them on because they're scared of the dark. The darkness has value. This light, when you shield it with your hand, oh, look at that. See, there was a guy there. You didn't see the guy because he was in a shadow created by this glaring light right in your face. If you shield it, you light the steps, you light the walkway, you light the doorway, but not the person who's coming up to the stairs. So Pittsburgh has dark sky ordinances. We put them in 2021, and we're going to start changing out lights in March. 39,000 lights, not like Philadelphia has over 100,000 lights. LA changed 240,000 lights a few years back. Like a lot of cities have a lot more street lights. But these new street lights, I wanted the first one. This is a spectrum of a light that is narrow band. So it's just kind of an orangey color. Or I would have gone for the broader phosphor converted amber color. But what we got are the 2700 Kelvin. That's the ones they're putting in. They have a little blue peak. Blue light scatters more than red light. But that was the one they could buy. But if you look down at the bottom here, it says Sky Glow Impact. The first ones wouldn't have had a Sky Glow Impact. The second one's smaller, but this one that they're going to put in, unless they keep it dim enough, it's going to make the sky up to 8 times brighter. This is how we see lights at night and how they affect us. So fire doesn't affect the melatonin suppression. It doesn't affect that at all, our health, our circadian rhythms. Incandescent bulbs, which nobody uses anymore, they didn't affect it very much. But as soon as you start using fluorescent lights or LED lights, then there's a huge suppression because blue light signals your body it's day. These are what the Dark Sky International and the Illuminating Engineering Society, the people, the engineers who light things, agree on these 5 principles. And they're super simple. They're just like light only if it's needed. has to have a purpose. And there are streetlights in the middle of the woods out here. I don't know how that is even. But if you need a light, fine, have a light. We're not telling you to be in the pitch dark all the time. Target it so it falls where it's needed on your stairs, not in your neighbor's window. It doesn't trespass. That's called light trespass when it goes off where it's somebody else's yard. Low levels of light. The LEDs are very bright. If they're on dimmers, that's a lot better. A lot of times I recommend motion sensors or timers. So use light only when it's needed. You could turn them off too. Dim them, put them on motion sensors or timers, or turn them off. You go to bed, turn your lights off. And warmer colors. The blue violet ones scatter everywhere, and they're the worst for our health and the environment. Switch a little, talk about birds. We can actually see on radar that when birds are migrating, we can watch the pattern of migration. So 2 times a year, people turn their lights off during migratory bird season because birds are attracted to lights. When they migrate, they mostly migrate at night. It's safer for them because there are predators out. And if they're at night, the predators can't find them. So they migrate at night and they guide by the stars or the moon or the Milky Way. That's how they know how to do these sometimes thousands of miles, these routes. But they get attracted to lights in cities. There are 45 counties here in 19 states that have lights out programs. And Philadelphia is definitely one of them. But the birds get confused. They get caught in the beams of light. They get confused. They come into the city, pulled off their migratory route. So they only had enough energy on those little bodies to just make the route, just do the route. And they had stopping places along the route where they would eat. And so when they get pulled off into a city, not only did they not have the right food for their very aerobic route, but they don't have the right food, the right bugs aren't there. They crash into lit up buildings because they see a reflection of any street trees in the buildings. They don't see the glass. And up to 1 billion birds a year die because we've disrupted their migratory route. This is the facts sheet from the Philly, Lights Out Philly. So yeah, people go out in the mornings and they collect all the dead birds at the base of the tall buildings. But the thing is that a lot of those numbers are before we had so many lit up buildings or so much glass in the buildings, because we've learned how to make pretty much all glass buildings now. And so these statistics are low. One participating municipal building in the Toronto Lights Out program reported a cost savings of more than $200,000 in a single year. But we started Lights Out Pittsburgh. I'm very happy to say so many people signed on, so many organizations signed on to this. It saves you money. I know Carnegie Mellon was turning off 10 decorative installations from midnight to 6 a.m. during migratory season. And then they saved so much money, so many thousands of dollars, that they do it all year round now, midnight to 6 a.m. The lights go off outside. So these statistics are old. It's 2014, and it's probably undercounted, massively undercounted. This is my house. We were talking a little bit about this when we were chatting beforehand. I bought 8 acres of woods in the city of Pittsburgh, and I drove a tiny house up there on a truck. I didn't drive the truck, but I brought this tiny house up, and I have these stripes on my windows, which are bird safe. so that there isn't collisions into my house, especially since I put murals of trees on the side of my house. Every single time we study something, we end up realizing that it's affected by light pollution. We studied this one little sparrow and we realized West Nile virus stays twice as long in that sparrow if it's in light polluted areas. Everything we've studied, like every animal or plants, dawn song, it's a little different now because the birds get confused. They're singing at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's artificial light at night. There's these seasonal rhythms that the birds are used to have been changed. And what does that mean? Like these blackbirds breed a month earlier and 3 weeks earlier in urban environments. And the birds are not keeping up with the changing of the seasons. It affects body mass and age of first mating. We were looking at pigeons in cities. Bats are affected. They can be seen by predators, and the insects aren't near them. The insects are under the streetlight. Bugs in general are, there's an insect apocalypse that is coming. We have pollinators at night that do a lot of work, moths and bats and other creatures, not fireflies actually. They're not much in the way of pollinators, but there are pollinators, and if they don't do their job at night, the daytime pollinators can't make up the difference, and so they get thrown off. Their system gets thrown off also. 70% of moths were drawn towards the light instead of towards the flowers. So how do we fix that? Is at night, we just don't have those lights out. And poor fireflies. I feel bad. I go to the Firefly Festival in Pennsylvania. Oh, the last 3 years. It's beautiful. It's just spectacular. And this thing is, they mate by shining very faint, dim lights. And when you put lights in areas where firefly populations are, they don't have the capability to mate. And there's problems. There's so many problems. So a third of firefly species are at risk. This is a very long, complicated slide. And the whole purpose of me putting this here is it affects everything, the entire ecosystem. It affects the individual and the way that one little critter does something, then maybe it won't get enough food. And then there's a shift in daytime or nighttime activity. And it changes across the whole population of that little critter, mice or bats. And then that affects other species because maybe there's owls that would have eaten the mouse, but the mouse didn't want to come out in the light. So then interactions between different species gets changed. And then a whole community, that whole area, maybe lights are getting brighter in a neighborhood that's just going in. And so all the animals just move out into a darker and a darker area. So they migrate somewhere where they're now the invasives. It structurally changes the food web, because if there's not enough pollinators, then the crops are not doing as well. And you change things. Fish are affected. Algae are affected by light pollution. So it's not just on land or in the air, it's underwater also. And finally, like, you're changing the whole ecosystem by this one environmental stressor. And it's not studied enough. We know that trees bud out earlier in the spring. At our latitude, we're at 40 degrees north latitude, it is actually the light and the amount of light that tells trees when to bud in the spring, not the temperature. Not so much the temperature, but it's more the extended day that we're artificially making. And in the fall, if the buds come out earlier in the spring, they could get killed by a late frost. In the fall, if the trees hold their leaves longer, like you see these pictures, and the street light with the trees on that side of the tree, or in the other picture, the street light has the green leaves on the tree, whereas all the other leaves are starting to form the film between the stem and the leaf, you're stressing the tree. And if there's snow and the tree hasn't dropped its leaves yet, all those branches are going to come down. A thick, wet snow is going to fall on all the trees limbs, and it's going to break them. So there's a lot of reasons why trees are so harmed by light pollution. This is Purdue's list, and I could only fit the A's and the B's and a couple of C's. It goes on and on and on and on. Highly sensitive. This is something I just threw this slide in here because I think it's kind of funny. When you're trying to get plants to grow and grow and grow and grow and never take a break and grow and grow and grow and grow because you want to cut them and sell them like these, you put in these powerful purple lights and just increase their growth. It stresses them terribly, but it doesn't matter because they're going to cut them and take them away. So it's not like a garden or your lawn trees. So these are all over. These are proliferating all over. These huge purple, because blue light and purple light scatters more easily than red light. But I wanted to point out that environmental justice is something that we have understood for many years. Everybody should have the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards. And it turns out that this is from our dark sky ordinances in Pittsburgh. Communities of color experience overlighting and light pollution, which can negatively impact residents' mental and physical health at a disproportionate rate. We've seen it over and over. Light pollution impacts low-income communities disproportionately. Sierra Club, bright lighting is often associated with safety and may be used or perceived as a form of policing or aggression. When you look at a grid city, you can have the Asian, Hispanic, and Black areas 2 times as bright as white areas. No, if people don't realize it, they think it's great. And it's hard for me to explain that, this is bad. This means cancer in 20 years, like more risk of. People aren't thinking in 20 years what's going to happen. They're thinking of feed my kids. They got a lot of worries in areas where the mean income is low and that rent occupied apartments are high. And so we're fighting a lot of things here. So this is hard to take care of, to tell people about, unless you look at your own stuff first. I went through my house and I did a light pollution survey of my house. So do yourself first and then fix your barn lights and then look to your friends and your neighbors. But a group of people, a group of committed citizens, they can change the world. We being, I don't know who put in for this, but it's great. Somebody put in for a Dark Sky Week proclamation. That's a thing you could do. Do you know any of these senators? Comita, Brown Street, Fontana. I know Costa is my area. Comita is all the way in your area. Carolyn Comita, Capoletti, Kearney. It's a bipartisan issue. Light pollution, which is great. Mark Gross says we have a new webpage. So Dark Sky PA has a webpage, and feel free to join us. Mike Lincoln used to head up Dark Sky PA. He put a petition on change.org, and I don't know what the latest number is. It's more than that now. But you could sign a petition that just says, let's protect our dark skies. And here's a weird thing I did. I edited a book of stories about light pollution and dark skies. You do whatever it is that you can do, because everybody's got different skills and everybody's got a different thing that they're interested in. The Dark Sky International just this week, and I haven't had a chance to go through and read all the pages yet. They just put in templates for ordinances for smaller areas, towns, villages, all the way up to cities and states. And they have a template, and you just can copy that, and it's blanks where you put the name of your town in, and you just fill them in, and they're supported. They will help you go through it. They will work with your legislators, and you can put these ordinances into place. And then when there is a problem, neighbor moves to town and they're used to living in a city and they're terrified of the dark, so they light it up to the moon. You have something to fall back on to say, we have ordinances, this is violating them. So that was what I had.
Well, in that case, I want to say thank you so much, Diane. We really appreciate you taking the time and speaking with us this evening. It's a great topic. Obviously, as we said, this is going to be recorded, so there will be lots more people who get to see this, and I'm sure